You followed the rules, you ran easily, you trusted the science. So why are you still stuck at the same pace? What if the training method you believe is protecting you is actually preventing you from ever breaking through? You've been told this rule so many times that it feels untouchable. 80% easy, 20% hard. The holy formula, the scientific answer, the shortcut to running faster without burning out. And here's the uncomfortable question no one wants to ask out loud. What if the very rule you trust the most is the reason you're still stuck, not injured, not exhausted, just stagnant? You train consistently, you follow the plan, you do everything right. Yet when race day comes, your goal pace still feels fragile. You don't explode immediately, but you can't hold on either. That's not bad luck, and it's definitely not a lack of discipline. It's a mismatch, a quiet one. A rule designed for bodies running 250 kilometers a week, being applied to yours. This is RunForce Mindset, and if you care about training with intelligence, not dogma, make sure you subscribe to the channel so we can keep delivering content that actually moves your performance forward. Now, before we go any further, pause for a second and reflect. Quick question for you, and be honest. A, the reason I'm not faster is that I need more easy mileage. B, the reason I'm not faster is that I'm training the wrong system. Comment A or B below. By the end of this video, one of those answers will no longer make sense. If that question made you hesitate, that hesitation is exactly where this conversation needs to begin. Because this is not about proving that the 80-20 rule is wrong. It's about understanding what it was built to solve and whether that problem is actually yours. Training systems don't exist in a vacuum. They are responses to specific physiological demands, specific workloads, and specific limits. And when those limits change, the system must change with them. The mistake most runners make is assuming that effort is universal, that percentages scale cleanly, and that a method designed for extreme volume can simply be shrunk and still produce the same adaptations. It can't. This video is about context, not motivation, not willpower, not discipline. It's about why copying elite frameworks without elite volume quietly redirects your training away from adaptation and toward comfort. Once you see that distinction clearly, everything else begins to make sense. Why 80-20 works for elites? To understand why this misalignment matters, we have to go back to the environment where the 80-20 rule was born. Polarized training did not emerge as a clever shortcut for getting faster with less work. It emerged as a necessity. At the elite level, training volume is so high that the primary threat is no longer understimulation, but collapse. Muscles, tendons, and the nervous system are pushed to limits most recreational runners will never experience. In that context, intensity is the dangerous element, not laziness. The purpose of the 80% is often misunderstood. It is not there to magically create speed. It exists to make extreme workloads survivable. Long hours at very low intensity allow elite runners to accumulate enormous weekly mileage while keeping systemic stress just low enough to recover from the remaining 20%, which is brutally demanding. That 20% includes long threshold sessions, high-end aerobic work, and race-specific efforts that would be impossible to repeat week after week without a massive buffer of easy volume. At that scale, the aerobic system is already highly developed. The mitochondria are abundant. The cardiovascular system is efficient. The limiting factor is not basic endurance, but the ability to stack high-quality sessions without breaking down. Polarized training solves that problem elegantly. This is why the model appears so clean, so disciplined, and so convincing. It produces resilient athletes capable of absorbing enormous stress. But notice what it optimizes for: durability, not discovery. It protects fitness that already exists and allows small gains to accumulate safely over time. When elite runners follow the 80-20 structure, they are not searching for adaptation in the 80%. They are preserving the body so that the 20% can do its work. And that distinction, preservation versus adaptation, is where the misunderstanding begins for everyone else. And this is where the same structure, lifted out of that elite environment, begins to quietly fail. When weekly volume drops, the entire physiological equation changes. The 80% is no longer a protective buffer against extreme stress. It becomes the dominant signal your body receives. For a runner training 50 to 55 kilometers a week, that means most sessions are easy by design, controlled by heart rate, guided by comfort, and intentionally non-challenging. On paper, the percentages still look disciplined. In reality, the stimulus is diluted. Elite runners accumulate hundreds of kilometers at low intensity, enough to saturate aerobic pathways and force deep mitochondrial and capillary adaptation. At lower mileage, the same percentage produces a completely different outcome. 40 kilometers of easy running is enough to maintain aerobic health. It is not enough to fully activate the mechanisms that polarized training depends on to justify such a large allocation of time. This is the volume gap most runners never account for. Percentages scale cleanly on spreadsheets, but biology does not scale that way. Adaptation responds to absolute exposure, not proportional intent. So what happens instead? Valuable training time is invested in a stimulus that feels productive but cannot be maximized within the available workload. Progress slows, not because the runner is undertrained, but because the training signal is too weak to demand further change. This creates a subtle trap. The runner feels fresh. Injuries are rare. Consistency improves, yet performance plateaus. Race pace does not stabilize. The ceiling remains unchanged. The problem is not effort, and it is not commitment. It is that a recovery-oriented framework is now being asked to drive adaptation without the volume required to make that possible. And the body, quite simply, does not respond to intentions, it responds to stimulus. And when the training signal becomes too weak to drive further change, the body reveals the real point of resistance. Every runner has a physiological ceiling that determines performance, and progress only happens when training repeatedly presses against that ceiling. For elite athletes, that ceiling is often maximal oxygen uptake or mechanical efficiency. For the intermediate runner, it is almost always something more basic and more frustrating: the inability to sustain goal pace without rapidly accumulating fatigue. This is the lactate threshold. It is the line where effort stops feeling controlled and starts demanding payment. Breathing becomes labored, stride tightens, and pace begins to slip, even though motivation remains high. This is not a mental failure. It is a metabolic one. The body is producing byproducts of intensity, faster rate than it can clear and reuse them. What makes this bottleneck so deceptive is that it rarely shows up in easy training. Easy miles feel smooth, recovery feels good, fitness appears stable. The problem only reveals itself when you ask the body to hold a meaningful pace for an extended period of time. This is why so many runners experience the same pattern on race day. The opening kilometers feel effortless, confidence builds. And then somewhere past the midpoint, the cost of that pace suddenly arrives all at once. The body has never been trained to manage that level of stress for that long. The most effective way to raise this ceiling is not through short bursts of intensity. It is through sustained exposure to the exact intensity where breakdown begins. This is tempo work, controlled, uncomfortable, repeatable efforts that teach the body to clear, recycle, and tolerate lactate while maintaining rhythm and efficiency. When training consistently avoids this intensity, the bottleneck remains untouched. And no amount of additional easy running can compensate for a system that has never been challenged where it actually fails. How does 80-20 kill the tempo run? And this is where the contradiction inside the 80-20 structure becomes impossible to ignore. At lower weekly mileage, the 20% of hard training is not a focused block of adaptation. It gets fragmented. One session becomes short intervals, another turns into a few fast surges. Sometimes it's hills, sometimes strides, sometimes a vague mix of everything labeled as quality. What disappears is sustained stress. Lactate threshold does not respond to flashes of intensity. It responds to duration at the edge of control. It requires long, continuous efforts where the body is forced to manage discomfort without escaping it. But within an 80-20 framework at 50 kilometers a week, there is rarely enough room left for that kind of work to exist consistently. The result is a quiet but decisive failure. Easy running dominates the week, yet it never pressures the bottleneck. The harder sessions feel demanding, but they are too short and too sharp to build durability at race-relevant intensity. Training becomes polarized in appearance but diluted in effect. This is why many runners feel fit but not fast. They feel capable but unstable. They can accelerate, surge, and recover, yet struggle to hold a steady pace when it matters most. Their training has improved their ability to start strong, but not their ability to endure. Nothing is technically wrong with the sessions themselves. The problem is what's missing between them. Without regular, sustained tempo work, the system that determines race performance is never fully stressed, and what is never stressed is never strengthened. And once that missing piece becomes clear, the entire picture snaps into focus. The truth is simple, but uncomfortable. The 80-20 model is built to prioritize recovery above all else. It assumes that the athlete is already under extreme load and must be protected from breaking down. In that context, it works brilliantly. Outside of it, the priorities quietly invert. For a runner training 50 kilometers a week, fatigue is not the primary threat. Stagnation is. The body is not being overwhelmed. It is being under-challenged in the one place that actually matters. A system designed to manage excess stress is now being asked to create progress without sufficient stimulus. This is why the training feels controlled but uninspiring, safe but flat. You are not failing to recover, you are failing to adapt. And that realization changes everything, because once you stop treating recovery as the central problem, a new question takes its place. If the goal is not protection but progression, then the structure itself must change. And when progression becomes the goal instead of protection, the training model must finally reflect that reality. This is where pyramidal training earns its place, not as a rejection of easy running, and not as a reckless push toward constant intensity, but as a structure that respects both adaptation and recovery in proportion to the demands of a lower volume runner. It acknowledges a simple truth: when time and mileage are limited, every session must carry a clearer purpose. In a pyramidal model, the majority of training remains easy. Roughly 65% of your running is still devoted to low-intensity work that supports aerobic maintenance, connective tissue health, and recovery between harder days. Easy running does not disappear. It becomes supportive rather than dominant. What changes is the center of gravity. Instead of compressing all meaningful stress into short, sharp efforts, 20 to 25% of weekly training is deliberately allocated to sustained tempo and threshold work. These sessions are long enough to create discomfort, but controlled enough to be repeatable. They teach the body to operate efficiently near its limit rather than constantly stepping away from it. The remaining 10 to 15% is reserved for higher intensity work. This includes intervals and faster efforts that maintain top-end aerobic capacity and neuromuscular sharpness. Crucially, these sessions enhance the pyramid rather than overpower it. They sit at the top, not at the core. Nothing about this model demands more total mileage. The change is not quantitative. It is qualitative. The same 50 kilometers are redistributed to better match the system that dictates performance. Training stops revolving around what feels safest and starts revolving around what creates durable progress. For the intermediate runner, this shift is not aggressive, it is precise. And precision, not volume, is what unlocks the next level of performance. And once the structure shifts, the way you think about each run has to shift with it. This approach demands that you let go of volume as a symbol of virtue. Easy running is no longer something you accumulate to prove discipline. It becomes a deliberate tool. Its purpose is to restore, to prepare, and to make the harder sessions possible. It supports the work, but it is no longer the work itself. Tempo training, on the other hand, moves to the center. It becomes the primary engine of endurance, not an occasional test or a risky experiment. These runs are not about suffering or bravado. They are about teaching the body a specific skill: how to remain relaxed, efficient, and metabolically stable at an effort that used to feel unsustainable. The long run changes as well. It stops being a slow endurance ritual and becomes a controlled rehearsal. Portions are guided closer to goal intensity, not to exhaust the body, but to expose it to realistic demands under fatigue. This is where confidence is built, not guessed. The philosophy underneath all of this is simple. At this level, fitness is not limited by how much you can tolerate, but by how precisely you train. When specificity replaces superstition, progress stops being random. It becomes repeatable. And when training finally becomes precise instead of performative, something unexpected happens. The pressure lifts. You stop feeling like you're behind, like you need more miles, more days, more sacrifice just to deserve progress. The endless chase for volume fades, replaced by a quieter confidence. You realize that your current workload was never the problem. It was never too small. It was simply misdirected. With the right emphasis, the same 50 kilometers begin to feel different. Pace stabilizes. Effort becomes predictable. The fear of blowing up late in a run slowly dissolves because your body has practiced exactly what the race will demand. This is not about shortcuts. It's about alignment. When training finally targets the system that was holding you back, improvement stops feeling accidental. It becomes inevitable. You are no longer hoping that fitness will show up on race day. You recognize it because you've already lived inside it in training. And once that confidence takes root, the final step is choosing how deliberately you want to move forward. Most runners stay stuck not because they lack effort, but because they follow rules that were never written for them. Generic advice feels reassuring, but it rarely leads to clarity. Progress comes when training is shaped around real constraints, real data, and real physiology. If you're ready to stop guessing and start training with intent, then the path is straightforward. Build your plan around your own threshold, your own schedule, and your own limits, because speed isn't found by copying champions. It's unlocked by understanding yourself. Here's the truth that ties everything together. Progress rarely fails because we lack effort. It fails because we invest that effort in the wrong place. The 80-20 rule works brilliantly in the context it was designed for, but when applied blindly, it can quietly shift us away from growth and toward comfort. Real improvement begins when training matches reality, your time, your volume, your physiology. When structure aligns with purpose, every run has meaning, and consistency finally translates into performance. Speed stops being something you chase and becomes something that emerges naturally from focused, intentional work. The deeper lesson is simple and universal. Not all proven methods are meant for every situation. In life, just like in training, copying what works for others without understanding your own context leads to stagnation. Apply this by questioning assumptions, identifying your real bottleneck, and directing your energy where it truly matters. Question for you. Do you think progress comes more from working harder or from working more precisely? Please comment in your view below so everyone can learn from different perspectives. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support RunForce Mindset and keep us motivated to create more valuable content for you.